Hi everyone, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes, but I know there are a lot of people in the room already, so figured we could do a quick sound and vision check. If you guys can see me and hear me, just you can write yes right in the chat box, or hopefully no no's. So it looks like at least right now we have a lot more parents than students. I'm sure your student has homework or other extracurriculars that they're busy with, but I would recommend if your student's available and can watch with you, really good for everyone to be on the same page and just make sure that we all know all this information about these tests. Just know that SAT, ACT, a little hard to say. So I might use just SAT or just ACT when I'm talking about some of the topics. But you can know that the information I'm going to give you applies to both tests. So that's the new SAT and the current version of the ACT. So yeah, so definitely good for both areas. Great, so let's get to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep getting to know each other. So really helpful you guys filling out those polls, just giving me a sense of who's in the room. We're going to talk about achieving mastery. So what we're here to do on those tests. I'll go over our 6 secrets. Of course, our presentation is titled Our 6 Secrets of the SAT. So we'll be sure to talk about those. I'm going to give you a demo of our 6 secrets. So the 6 secrets will be just general information about these tests, regardless of a study program that you want to use. But our 6 secrets demo will show you how the tested platform works with these 6 secrets. So I'll share my screen, I'll walk you around the site. So stay tuned for that. I'll also leave time at the end for any questions and answers. So I'll try to get to things in the chat box, but I want to make sure that I can get through the presentation and, of course, address any information. So hang tight at the end if you have a specific question, and I can answer that. If you have a question that's even more specific, and when I say specific, personal information about your student, this is an online forum. You don't want to be giving out, all types of just really personal bits of information. Or if you just want to talk to someone about your student's more specific state, like when should my student, based on these grades or these activities, these kind of preferences, take a test. Better to talk to one of our advisors who can spend 10 minutes on the phone with you, go over lots more specific information. So I can answer any general questions. But if you'd like to talk to an advisor, just book a 10-minute free call. You can click this orange link here at the bottom. If something comes to mind that isn't really quite suitable for this forum, you can definitely talk to one of our advisors here. Great, so let's get to it. My name is Sophie Heller. I'm the Director of Coaching here at Testive, which means that I manage all our group of tutors. I manage our billing. It's really exciting. I've been here just past my 2-year anniversary with Testive. And before that, I was a student at Harvard College, graduated 2014, studied French literature and Mandarin Chinese. So really interesting. Allowed me to travel to multiple countries, live abroad. But now I'm in the Boston area. Really liked it up here and working with students towards the SAT. In my free time, really into running. Just ran a half this weekend. I've run a couple full marathons, and I'm trying to teach myself how to cook so that I'm not eating microwave dumplings before this presentation. Great. So we're here to talk about achieving mastery. And of course, I'm not the biggest sports person aside from the running, but I do know that this year LeBron James is widely purported to be the best player in the NBA currently. And so, you can feel free to disagree with me, but that's what my sources say. LeBron James is, as the best player or so-called best player in the NBA, he has achieved mastery in his craft. And probably, of course, he probably had some sort of natural talent for basketball, maybe liked it a lot when he was growing up, but I don't think he walked right on the court his first day and just was a superstar. He had to go through a lot of discipline, a lot of training in order to achieve that. And if you asked him what he had to do, he'd probably give you some answer about practicing every day, making sure to be consistent, making sure to be really dedicated. If you pressed him further, he might even point to some of the coaches that he's had over the years, coaches or mentors or just other teammates, people who pushed him along, kept him accountable. And so I know that this is a much more kind of interesting thing than test prep, but it is a really good analogy for what we're going to try to do with the SAT. And so just think about reinforcing those behaviors. So testive is one of the ways that can reinforce behaviors that lead to mastery. But as I said before, I'm going to just go over general strategies about the test, general information. So it will apply regardless of whether you're interested in our program or not. Our learning philosophy, though, does combine technology and human motivation in order to bridge the gap between effort and score improvement. So you can definitely make a lot of improvement just by looking at technology, looking at books, looking at different course materials, but having that human motivation. So basically, LeBron James, he could have been doing drills by himself. He could have been doing just his own work, but having the motivation of his coach did allow him to bridge that gap. So we look to do the same thing here. Now on to our first secret. So our first secret, and not that many students in the room, but still, I'm sorry for those of you guys who are here. This does matter. Um, the defining moment of your life, but it is something that really matters in going towards your college application journey. So it can really affect where you end up at school. So you want to approach it with an air of seriousness because it is pretty serious. The college application process is, of course, vary and split into some different parts. Grades are the most important part of your student's college application package. And this is because grades, if you think about it, it's an analogous way for colleges to see how you do in their school. So most high school is 4-year high school, 4-year college. It's kind of the same system for seeing if you'd be suited academically for that school. And grades are important because they show your progress all over high school. So not just in one semester or one year rather, but all throughout your high school journey. Grades are important. Our runner up is test scores, which test scores are definitely our second most important factor. I'll show you guys in a little bit how test scores and grades do play together. A couple people said personal essays. That's true. That can add some color to your essay or to your college application rather. I wrote a lot of my college essays about favorite books that had influenced me, so that definitely can be interesting, but it's so subjective that it's not the defining factor in your application. No one said activities or employment, which again, it's also subjective. It shows leadership qualities, responsibilities, but not defining enough. And I'm happy to say that no one chose your income. That definitely not a good choice. Great. So if we look at those factors that we just looked at, grades and test scores, those are our objective factors. And they're objective because they're numbers or letters that can be used to evaluate students across an entire applicant pool. So you have a 95, you have a B, you have a 1600, you have a 35. These are scores that are the same for really anyone applying to school, so they can evaluate you against other applicants. Your activities and essays are more subjective. So, they're things that you do after school, like sports, extracurriculars, or essays that you've written about your personal experiences. They're still really interesting to colleges, but not as much in a comparative way. I wanted to look at some specific schools because, I can give you guys all this data, but I think it's much more interesting to look at a school to see how these grades and test scores play together. So I'm in the Boston area right now, so I chose BU, which is just a couple miles down the street. Really great school. For those of you who don't know, it's a big, big research university in a pretty urban environment in downtown Boston. And I wanted to show that students' GPA and their test scores on one of these standardized tests really do work together while colleges are evaluating that student. So right here we have a graph. Every green dot represents a student who applied with these qualifications, got into BU. Red dot is someone who wasn't that lucky. And of course, we do have outliers here, but as you can see, as we start, if we have a 3.5 GPA, that alone, even though grades are the most important thing, isn't going to cover us if, we have a pretty low ACT score. So if we have a 12, that's out of 36, not going to be the one factor to get us into college. But as we start going towards about 26 in here, and the green dots get a lot more populous. So you can see that it really does serve to augment grades that even though those grades are already good, they're really edged into acceptableness or not acceptableness, but being accepted by colleges when those ACT scores are high. In order to show you that this holds true at a similar school, I looked at NYU, which is another large research university, urban environment, but in downtown Manhattan, it's a lot bigger. And we can see that same thing, 3.5. We're going across, and as we get closer to 30, the green dots get a lot more populous. So this is something that's interesting to look at for some of the schools you might be considering. So I got these charts from a site called capex.com, which I put right in the chat box. Really interesting site, has a lot of data about schools you might be considering, so always good to get that information out there. I will say though, I want to stress, your SAT scores are the only part of your application you can move in a short period of time. As I said before, a GPA is built up over 4 years of high school, So it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing, like, say, well, personally, I took AP Chem senior year of college or of high school, and it was a really tough class. I didn't do too well in that class. One semester of a bad grade wasn't going to completely ruin the GPA I'd worked really hard for. But conversely, let's say you had a couple years that were a bit mediocre, you had one good year, that's not going to completely move your GPA up. So that's something that you have to work consistently on all 4 years of high school. But if you spend 2 to 3 months working really hard studying for that SAT, then that is something that can move your scores up, and you can really see that influence your grades, just as we saw in those two charts before. So of course we're going to talk about how you can do that. Our second secret, we know it's important. When do we prep? When do we even start looking at this? So good information for those of us who are mainly sophomores and juniors here. You guys are right in the target for starting to prep for these tests. I like to think about it as a function of when you have 100 hours. So I don't mean when do you have 100 hours, you're going to, okay, you're going to lock yourself in your basement with your SAT materials, and you'll emerge 100 hours later and know everything about the test. That just sounds terrible. And I'm someone who chose to work in professional test prep. I mean, when do you have 100 hours that you can build up over the course of, say, 2, 3, 4 months until a test date in order to make those progress or make that progress? So you want to think about it, of course, in a function of when those test dates are. Generally, the SAT is given the first Saturday of the month. The ACT varies a little bit, and of course, these are the nationally listed dates. I understand that certain schools or certain states will give nationally, or not nationally, but selective administered dates. So that can vary, but this is when the nationally administered test dates are. So you want to think about that and just think of those 100 hours. So right now we're in mid-March. A little bit tough. So if we're looking at that April 9th ACT, a little tough to get those 100 hours unless you're going to spend tons and tons of time per week. But you definitely have time to get those 100 hours in before that June test, or looking at the SAT side of things, the June test, or even one of those summer tests. So really important to look at when those tests are given. In addition to looking at when tests are given, you want to think about when you're most free in your high school journey. So, using a really cheesy metaphor, I understand that it's cheesy, but it does do the purpose. So, you want to think about it as climbing a mountain. So, we look at our high school experience like a mountain. Sophomore year before, I know there weren't that many of you guys in the room, but I have some great news for you guys. It's too early to start working on standardized test prep. And this is because you haven't completed a lot of the coursework that's going to be tested. Both the SAT and the ACT test on advanced math topics like geometry, trig. They both have higher level reading. The ACT has science. So it's kind of it's not really self-serving to study for a test when you haven't even learned the material for the first time. This is a better time to focus on getting that GPA up. So really building up those scores so that way when you hit junior and senior year, which have generally harder classes, you've already have a solid base in your GPA. The summer before your junior year, so you sophomores in the room, that's a great time to prep because it's likely the last time you'll have a lot of free time before college applications. I understand that you might have summer programs or summer reading or all the various things that you do during the summer, but trust me, it's a lot easier to focus on the tests when you're not also focusing on college visits, college essays, all that jazz. Junior year, so most of us here, you want to start as soon as possible, but of course work around your activities. So if some of you guys were fall athletes, winter athletes, the spring could be a really nice time to prep because you won't have other extracurriculars in the way. Conversely, if you're heading into maybe a really tough academic season with APs or other types of extracurricular commitments, not as good an idea to start now. You might want to wait till the summer. The summer before senior year is a great time because, of course, you'll be working on applications. It's not as free as the summer before junior year, but it still can give you that final boost. So that 2, 3 months where you can really move that SAT score and just like we saw in our charts, really get to where you want to be for scores. So good things to keep in mind. So now that we know when we're going to do it, you might be thinking, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to take those 100 hours and put them to good use? I'm going to tell you guys that there's only one method of effective preparation. First step, we want to get a baseline score. So if I told you guys, okay, today is Tuesday, on Saturday you're going to go to the test center, take your test, you've never seen the material before, you've never studied, and we're going to see how you do. That's one way to get a baseline score, but as you might imagine, And as 50% of you guys already know, it's a really draining experience to go to a test center. You have to wake up early on a Saturday. You can't do anything fun Friday. You're paying at least $50 to take that test, and then it's exhausting. And then, furthermore, colleges might even have access to that test you took as your baseline. So you don't want to put that out into the official world. Better way to do that is to get a baseline based on a previous test that was administered in past years and just take it under simulated test conditions. These are the books we use in our program. These are the Red Book, the Real ACT Prep Guide, and what we call the Aqua Book, the Official SAT Study Guide. And they contain tests that have been either previously given in the sense of the ACT or completely based on the new SAT just because we've only had one test so far. We don't have four real tests to present in the book. But these are great because you can just take one of these tests. So, it's still a bit of an effort. You're going to spend the about 4 hours going through the test, following the directions, really trying as hard as you can. But you can do it from the comfort of your own home and you don't have to pay a lot of money to take that test. So you want to get a baseline from here. Once you've gotten that baseline, you want to identify areas of weakness. Our testive grader, so basically what we do is we allow you to put in your answer sheets from these tests, and we'll give you a really detailed breakdown of how you did. So this is a student's ACT test, and you can see here that the student had overall 25 in English, 23 in math, but what our system does is breaks it down even further so you can see what exactly you're struggling with, because 23 in math, while it is lower than English, it's not that descriptive. Like, what does that mean? Which questions should I work on? It's saying here that this student should really work on algebra because algebra, of the 17 questions, the student only got about half right. So definitely much more of a struggle area than geometry, which the student got a majority, not every question right, but still a majority of questions right. So you want to do this to break down your weaknesses as specifically as you can. From there, you want to practice in those areas. Review every question you got wrong or guessed on. So if you weren't totally sure why you got the question wrong or just, what exactly was going on, you want to make sure you understand that. And in addition to understanding why you got that particular question wrong, you want to learn the underlying concept. So much more important to learn not, oh, I got number 23 wrong because number 23 goes like this and has such and such variables. Much more important to understand that, okay, number 23 is a functions problem. In functions problems, I have to understand this concept and this concept because that's going to be transferable. Trust me, I've seen a lot of these tests. They're very repetitive, so you're never going to see the exact same question, but you are going to see questions that look uncannily similar to questions that you may have seen in your practice. So you want to make sure you can do everything you can in order to get a similar question right in the future. So again, much more important to learn concepts than to learn just what specifically about this question confused you. And then you want to do all of that in small increments until you reach those 100 hours. And that doesn't have to be a ton of time, it doesn't have to be hours a day. It could be 20 minutes between other homework assignments. It could be 15 minutes while you're waiting for practice. Just any amount of time that can really get you practicing and up to speed with these questions. Our fourth secret deals a little bit more with that study process. So you want to spend much more time reflecting than doing questions. So this isn't about a whole plug and chug, just, okay, so I'm bad at algebra. I'm going to do 100 algebra questions a day. You're not necessarily going to see progress from that if you're not spending time just going over why you're struggling with those questions. So simply doing the questions, it's not about memorization. It's about learning techniques so that you can work in those trouble areas going forward. I tell my students to spend only a third of the time doing new questions and 2/3 of the time reviewing wrong answers. So if you're studying for 30 minutes in a day, only do new questions for 10 minutes, spend 20 minutes going over everything you got wrong or even slightly confused about because it's so much more important to know those concepts. We make it really easy for you on Testive. So every question that a student gets wrong exposes them to a really nice platform in order to help them review and just write down a little review note. So we make it really easy for you guys. Something that's a little less easy in our next secret is less easy for parents in particular. You guys are usually better cheerleaders than taskmasters. And this is because you guys are so involved in your students' lives and their academic lives, extracurricular lives, social lives, family lives, that you don't want to add another thing to your plate, and your student doesn't want you to either. So it's much more important for you to serve as a positive sense of enforcement. So just, asking your student how's it going? I'm proud of you for working on this. Other sorts of positive ways of reinforcing their studying versus questions like, did you study today? How many questions have you done? How much have you improved? Questions like that are just emotionally taxing, and you guys do so much for your student. You're involved in so many parts of their lives, just social, academic, extracurricular, family lives. It's much better to let someone else do this. So we like to say that someone else should be the bad cop. And of course, as these testimonials point out, our coaches are really great. I think our coaches are really great, but that someone else doesn't have to be someone from a professional SAT company. It could be a friend, it could be a neighbor, a peer, an older sibling, a relative who's not you, a former teacher, really anyone who you think could be a good source of accountability and support for your student while you're there just to provide positive encouragement. Our great teachers, though, are really good at working with students, and I wanted to just show you a few, just to give you a sampling of the kinds of coaches that work with us, that work with students at Testiv. We have coaches like Abby, who she got her master's in divinity at Harvard Divinity School, and she's now working as a chaplain in Brigham Women's Hospital, which is a major hospital in Boston. She's also a certified wildland firefighter, so really interesting person, really quirky. We have people like David, who also studied at Harvard. He got a master's in ethics, and he wrote a children's book in French, which is really interesting, especially for me as a former French major, or rather French major. And we have people like Jake, who studied physics at Lehigh, received a master's in product development at Lehigh, and is working on his own edtech startup in addition to Testiv. So really interesting people, and that's just a small sampling. We have about 25 tutors right now, and everyone is really different in their academic interests and in their backgrounds, but definitely united by their passion for education and desire to work with students. So just really interesting people. I want to move on to our sixth secret, and you guys might think I've spent my whole night learning about these secrets only to be told this, but it's true. The only secret is to do the work. You can know about how important the test is, you can know about um, that you have to prep at certain times, you can know how to study, and okay, I have someone to mentor me through it, but if you don't put in the work, then it's all for naught. And putting in the work doesn't have to be in hours and hours and hours. It can be just 15 or 20 minutes a day. And if you study the way we talked about in secrets 3 and 4, just really effectively, you're spending most of your time reviewing questions rather than doing new ones, then you can really make those strides in a tiny amount of time. The way to get there. So it's pretty simple. Just like you want to lift the right weights at the gym, you want to do the right work on your SAT. And the reason that our students, you can see here that our students, our free software students, compared to our coaching program students, achieve about 150-point increase on the old SAT, about a 3-point increase on the ACT, and they're able to achieve 3 times the national industry average by doing about 6 times more work, and that's because of their coaches who are able to motivate them through a process that, I'm the first to admit that it's not a fun process. I want to show you though how we actually do this. So I think it's much more interesting. You've heard just the general secrets, but I want to show you how our platform works. So I'm going to start sharing my screen right now. And share desktop. And you should be able to see, can you guys still see and hear me? You should see a tested page. Put that chat bar up. Okay, great, great. So I've chosen a fake student for you guys, but still wanted to show how the student is getting the Testiv experience. So you may have guessed, Sly T Fox, not a real student, but still someone who's really trying to improve his ACT score. So Sly has come right here, and this is his student account. And on his student account, he's going to be able to practice for every section of the ACT, schedule calls with his coach, and really improve that score. But first off, what do you guys know? What's our first step? So if Sly's signing up for coaching, what does he have to do the first thing he does in his coaching program? And you can put that right in the chat box. Sure, we have to have a call, but what specifically? Baseline score. Yes, that's exactly what Sly needs to do. So every student that comes into our program completes a full-length test under simulated conditions because that's the best way the coach knows how to help them. So Sly can go in and upload a test. can take a PDF practice test or any Redbook test. And let's see, we just updated the interface. So let me see if I can navigate this. He's going to go in, bubble scores, and here we go. That same score breakdown I showed you before. And I'm going to just minimize this for a second. And we can go in, we can see the exact weaknesses. So English at 25, but what specifically does he need to work on? Math is a little lower, and this is the score I showed you before. Reading and science. So the coach can go in here and see exactly how Sly did and give him a really detailed study platform or study program on the platform. So we know that Sly is struggling a little bit with algebra, with some science questions. Reading and English are a little higher, but Sly told me that he's trying to get above a 30. He's looking at some pretty competitive colleges, so we're going to do everything we can to get above that composite of 23. In order to do that, he's going to fit in study time into his calendar. So, like I said before, you don't need that much time, 15, 20 minutes a day. Even studying on every other day, you can still see a lot of progress. So, Sly and I worked out a calendar where he's completing about 20 questions every day, or most days at least, and trying to get to 100 questions a week. And that's the general average of what our students complete. Remember that you're completing 100 questions, but you're spending a ton of time reviewing and really learning those underlying concepts. So, really easy way to make sure that you're chipping away at all your weak areas. Sly has a study calendar that's shared with me, his coach, so I can see when he is doing well and when he's slacking a little bit. To be fair, it's spring break right now, so it's a little bit less, but the coach knows exactly when your student is studying and isn't studying, so can provide daily monitoring along the way. Sly also signed up for text reminders, so he'll get a text from Testive every day telling him to study. So really good for students who have so much on their plate and can't always be remembering that they have SAT stuff as well to study for. So he set up his calendar. He's going to go into practice. So Sly's problem area was algebra. So I want to show you how the questions look in our algebra section. So let me go here, algebra, and let's see if we can do some math. So parents in the room, we're going to go back to high school for a little bit and see how we do with these. So I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to look at this question and let me know if you have any ideas for what x could be. Anyone have an idea? Okay, I see an answer. 9. Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, I see 2, 9. Okay, I see a lot of 9. So let's assume you guys are right. Awesome. It was 9. Let's try another one. A little harder this time. Our questions are based on your ability level, so the more we answer right, the harder questions we get. Okay, I see some typing. Yeah, so some of these questions you would need a calculator, but there's probably a way that you can look at this question and manipulate it in a way where you don't need to know exactly 3 to the 7th. That's a big number. I don't know that off the top of my head. Okay, so someone said 3 to, oh, cool, you got the little square root to work. So let's put that. Oh man, good try, but not totally what the question was looking for. And so, of course, we did that question pretty quickly. If my student was doing this, I'd tell my student to take some more time, use scratch paper, potentially a calculator, but a lot of times the tests don't allow calculators, or at least for every section. So, you would have been given more time. But for the purpose of this, let's just assume the student got this wrong just during a practice set. You're taken to our review center, which includes a video about exactly what happened in the question, how you can rethink it, and a place to write a note about it. So all our videos are made by coaches. I've made a good deal of them on the ACT. Just really good walkthroughs of the questions.
This is the real Tom Rose, and this is a really clever exponents problem. We have an equation with two variables, a and b. but let's 3. So it'll be the same, but exponent raised to an exponent.
So Tom will go through it and we'll explain the question. We didn't spend a diligent time doing it, so I won't make you watch the whole video, but we have these videos for questions and really good way to see exactly what you did wrong. And these videos, as you can see, they pop up exactly when the student gets the question wrong. So you can always know exactly what's going on. So there's no kind of gap between when you did the question and when you're learning the material. Once we look at that, we can go here and write a review note about what we would do differently. So any review note here you're going to see. So for the sake of this exercise, I'm just going to write that this was webinar question. But if a student were really doing this, we'd want to write a really good review note, just detailing exactly what happened in the problem. The reason that students write review notes is that they and their coaches are exposed to this page, which has a history of every question completed and all the notes they've written for wrong questions. So as we see here, we have that one we got right and our webinar question that we just got wrong. And I can scroll down here, and so I'm Sly's coach. I can see exactly which questions he's struggling with and which ones we should look at. So it looks like for these, he has some good notes. I'm just going to minimize this. Some good notes. For some of them, we have some questions. So Kyle, maybe Kyle is the coach in this case. So which question should be, reviewed by the coach during a session? Can we go over this? So really interesting. I need help on this question. It's a really efficient way to connect questions that students have issues with to the coach. So you can go over that immediately during that kickoff meeting and during the check-in calls. So shown you practice, I've showed you some of the other features. Most importantly, students and coaches can track the score improvement. So Sly wants to reach at least a 32, and we can see that math has gone up, science has gone up, English has gone up, and reading has gone up, which is really impressive, but it's useful to see how the breakdowns work so that we can make sure to keep targeting the exact subsection weaknesses that Sly needs to work on. In order to do this, in addition to the practice I showed you, Sly's going to follow a weekly curriculum set by his coach. So the assignment here is going to give some really specific questions to work on, and we'll point him in the right direction. You can also book calls through our website. So you can book a nice call with me in my writing gear by following the website. So trying to make it as easy for students as possible. So I hope that makes a little sense. I'm going to go back to the presentation, but I hope that gives you a better sense of the way the platform works and how students are interacting with the ACT studying on the line. Just to sum up, our coaching program pairs students with top 1% coaches in order to receive weekly video chat sessions and daily monitoring. We send you a personalized weekly curriculum that you can work on between our weekly meetings. And we provide a parent portal with weekly parent updates. So you can know, even though you're just there as a cheerleader, you can know exactly what your student's doing. So really, really nice way for your students to progress. I will mention that everything I've shown you, with the exception of the coach assignments, the weekly video chats, is totally free on our website. So testive.com, you can sign up for a free student account. I encourage you all to do so because even if you're not interested in a program like ours with a coach, you can still use the strategies we talked about, that effective studying, going through the weaknesses, spending time reviewing. You can use that all by yourself, and our free software makes that really easy. Some people like that push, that human guidance I talked about before. That's what our coaches are here for. To sum up, it's a really great program, and I'm really interested to hear from anyone who's considering it. Our coaching sessions start at $3.99 a month. That's for those weekly meetings, daily monitoring, everything I showed you. Flexible monthly billing, I can assure you that. I handle the billing here. And we offer a 2-week risk-free trial. So if you decide it's not quite the right thing for your student, no questions asked, you can cancel at any point. And our spring dates are approaching pretty fast. So we have test dates approaching the April 9th ACTs I talked about, which we do offer a boot camp program for, an accelerated program to get you ready for that test. And of course, tests that are a little farther away. So if you want to sign up for one of those tests or considering our program, you can click that same orange link down here for questions, or you can book a call with us in order to find out more about our program and speak more about your student-specific situation. I will say though that because you guys attended, you guys got information from the source, you got to learn a little bit more about our product. If you are interested and you feel like you can make that push, you don't need to talk to an advisor. If you sign up on our purchase page, so right here, and use the code, you can save $50 per month off each of your payments. But in order to do so, you got to do that within 24 hours. Thank you guys again for attending. I hope the information was useful. Really, it was really exciting for me to be able to share information about the SAT and ACT, but please do book a call with one of our advisors if you want to find out more, especially with specific questions. And thank you guys.